One of the questions you need to ask when you're about to plant a tree, should I be planting trees in this ground now? And that speaks to your soil and its fertility. And if the answer is not an emphatic yes, then you need to back off, take a season, a year, who knows, maybe two, and really devote yourself to a robust soil building regimen, which includes deep tillage, whether it's a hand scale with a raised bed and double digging, or field scale with various implements, liberal addition of compost, and a cover crop turned in as a green manure. All right, come back and you're ready to plant the tree. In most cases, if your soil is reasonably fertile, you needn't fertilize the fill soil. I'm going to take a look at the soil here at the UCSC Farm and Garden, which is a beautiful elkhorn sandy loam. Now let me just stipulate that the soil was not really designated at the outset of the garden and farm project in 1967 as a soil suitable for agriculture, and yet we have a thriving organic farm because of good practices. But this soil has what's called good structure or good aggregation. Let me grab a handful. And this is something I like to do flat out just about every time I come out into the field and garden. Squat down, grab a handful of soil, finger it, look at it, analyze it, savor it, and remind yourself, keep it going in terms of soil improvement. But this soil has what's called good aggregation. You can see there's an array of different size particles. Actually, they are particles that have been bound together through the exudates from plant roots, organic matter decomposition, and microbes into what are called aggregates, just bigger clumps. And this has marvelous aggregation or good structure. So we're good to go. All right, folks, let's talk about selecting bare root fruit trees. Essentially, you have two choices. A whip, which is simply the central trunk, no branches, and a branch tree. Your preference is a branch tree. These are both excellent trees, but this tree, it'll take it a year and a half, 2 years to get to this point. With a branch tree, you're out of the gate, down the road, quicker to growing, quicker to fruiting. Fruit, after all, is the object of our desires. So a branch tree or a whip. Get what you can, but if you can get a branch tree, get it. Let's talk a little bit about what comprises a quality tree. I'm going to use the branch tree as an example. A quality tree is tall, 4 to 7 feet tall, and has a number of branches. There's really good horizontal distribution, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's pretty good vertical distribution. That is a little bit as we go up the trunk. A little more in the verticality would be better, but this is good enough. We'll adjust them a little when we prune and train, but this is a good starting point. So this is a quality tree. It's tall, has a number of branches that are reasonably long, and then if we look at the base of the trunk here, this point here with the bulbous swelling and a little bud stem scar is the point at which is called the bud union or the graft union. It's the point at which a bud was taken from the scion or the bearing variety, in this case the Blenheim apricot, and inserted into the trunk of the rootstock. In this case, the rootstock citation, which is an excellent semi-dwarf rootstock for stone fruits. So you want your tree to have what's called a 1/2 inch or greater caliper. Caliper is simply the diameter of the trunk at the base, and it's measured with a little calibration tool, so you don't have to chop the tree down and measure. That would be counterproductive. So this is a 3/4 inch caliper tree. Again, let's review. Tall tree, branch tree, good spacing between the branches, 1/2 inch or greater caliper. And now let's look at the root system. Okay, let me, as they say in a court of law, the defense stipulates to this. No arguments. This is considered a quality root system for a dormant deciduous fruit tree. Yeah, I know it looks pretty skimpy in comparison to the robust top growth, but this is good. This is B plus, A minus. This is pretty good. And it's important, obviously, to have a good root system. Roots go out and forage for water and nutrients, and essentially, along with photosynthesis, grow the tree. So this would be considered good. Another thing here is that you'll notice tree roots are absolutely not symmetrical. So in a minute, when we get to digging the hole for this, you can dig a hole that somewhat mirrors the shape of the roots. In this case, more long and lean rather than completely circular. Another choice you may choose to make is whether to buy a true bare root tree, as you see here, or a bare root specimen that has been potted by a nursery into a 5-gallon container, in this case with organic potting mix. If you're going to be able to plant right away, get yourself a bare root tree and plant it right away. If you can't, this route of going with the pre-potted bare root gives you some serious holding power. You could easily hold this tree 2, 3, dare I say 4 weeks before you need to plant it. So you have these two choices. Let me also just stipulate here that once a tree has started root growth and leafed out, it is a very dicey affair to try to transplant it, even if you're an expert transplanter. So plant your trees by hook or by crook before they leaf out. Okay, let's talk about the planting hole. There's an old quip: don't put a $5 tree in a 50-cent hole that needs to be updated for inflation. Don't put a $30 tree in a $3 hole. To it, you want a hole that is ample, about 2 feet, maybe 3 feet wide, and about 2 feet deep. But more specifically, as you can see with these roots here, I've sculpted this hole to fit the roots. The root shape is long and lean, a lot like the state of Tennessee, a really long state. So I've got a hole that's open, and I've fractured the bottom of the hole. One of the first things you do when you want to plant a fruit tree is you grab a friend. Hey, it takes 2 to tango. I don't have a friend. We're in pandemic times, so I'm here by myself. But I'm also reminded of a poem by that icon of the Harlem Renaissance, Langston Hughes. It's called Hope, and it goes, "Sometimes when I'm lonely, don't know why, just know that I won't be lonely by and by." So I've got my trusty companion, the stake, here to balance the tree. So you can see this tree and its root system fits into the hole dimension-wise. One thing that you want to do is grab a stake, in this case a garden fork, and lay it across the hole like that so you can see what the true measure of soil level is. And again, this bud union, this bulbous swelling here, is a point that's really important. Below it is the rootstock, which affects tree size. Above it is the variety, in this case the Blenheim apricot. But you do not want to bury the bud union, so you want it 2 to 4 inches above the ground, and it looks like I'm cool here. Okay, I have the tree positioned in the hole, roots spread evenly. My friend today is the stake, trees propped against it. Let's talk a little more about the hole, and that is to say, you want your sides to be straight, and you want to come and fracture the bottom of the hole 6-8 inches with a garden fork, just to increase drainage a little bit. I've done that. I've positioned this tree, but there's one additional thing repositioning, and as you can see here, I'm planting the scar of the bud union stem facing north, and that's so that the trunk of the tree protects that vulnerable portion from sunburn. Okay, we're good to go. And now we want to say, what we want to do is, as they say in the parlance, bury the tree. Now, mind you, we're not going to really bury the tree, but we're going to plant it. So I'm going to do this in a couple, 3 stages. I'm going to gently put soil in a little bit, tread it down a little bit, put a little more in, tread it down, and finish it off. And one of the predicates of success with transplanting, doesn't matter if it's a little lettuce or delphinium or a big tree like this, is good root soil contact. So the treading achieves that. Here we go. I'm going to stop now and, as mentioned, tread. Tread lightly. And let me say, as an intensive gardener, I'm reticent to walk on the soil in any capacity, but this is a good thing toward a good end. Let's finish it up. Okay, retread as it were. And essentially we're good to go. Okay, let's look at this tree for pruning and pruning it into the open center form. Think of your fingers cupped like this, essentially an open center. An open center form is generally composed of 3 to 5 multiple leaders. And let's look at this tree in terms of candidates. Let's look first at the number of branches here, and I'm talking about major branches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They have pretty good horizontal distribution. But I'm going to grow this tree to an open center form, and so I don't want a central leader. My first act here is to thin out the leader. As we say, put it on the ground. So now I have a nice sun cup, a nice open center form composed of 1, 2, 3, 4 primary branches. Let's thin a few extraneous branches here. And they are reasonably well distributed around the trunk here. Now, these two are a little close together, and there's a big gap there. So I can take a spreader. You have 2 types. Simply take redwood lath and notch them with a V-notch at the end. Or you can buy either metal or plastic spreaders like this. In this instance, I'm old school, I'm going to use the wooden spreader. So I can simply insert it between these 2 branches and spread them a little bit. Now, I may want this branch to be here, but it's only realistic to move it this far and not snap it. But I'm pretty good, I'm pretty satisfied with 1, 2, 3, 4 primary scaffolds. Okay, I'm going to clean them up, which is to say, at this point I don't want any distractions, I don't want any little lateral branches. So I'll thin everything but the singular extension of each of these branches. We'll deal with this later, but this is good. 4 primary branches spread well. They grow up and out and into the sun at about a 60 or 70 degree angle. Really, folks, it doesn't get much better than this when you're beginning a young open-centered tree. Okay, and now I'm going to cut back the branches. Counterintuitive as it seems, the more you cut back a branch, the longer and stronger it will grow in the following season. The general rule which I'm going to follow here is that you cut back branches of a newly planted tree about half their length. Also, you think of buds. Here's a bud, here's another bud, and here's a third bud, as pointers or directional arrows. And that is to say, whatever direction the bud you cut to is facing, that will be the direction of the resumption of growth. So in this case, an outward facing or under facing bud, growth would be like this. If I were to cut to an inward facing bud, it would be like that. So to facilitate, I'm going to cut these branches back about 50% of their length. I'm going to think about what direction do I want the regrowth to be. In this case, because as I indicated, we want this to move a little more that way, I'm going to pick a bud that's going in that direction, and I'm going to cut to that. So resumption of growth. Here I want something coming right at me, up and out. Similarly here, up and out. Okay. This branch, it's a little thinner, it's a little weaker. I'm going to cut it back a little harder. Again, counterintuitive as it seems, the more you cut back, the stronger the growth. And also I'd like it to be growing in an upright direction, a more upright direction. So I'm going to cut it back more than 50% and to an upward facing bud. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 branches here. They're reasonably well spread. This one has been pruned longer to stimulate more growth, these in the 50% bracket. And we have a very nice apricot tree here, the only apricot you ever want to grow, Blenheim, called Blenheim in England, where it's from, called Blenheim in the Central Valley of California, but it's the same thing. It is an apricot that is divine. Most other varieties of apricots taste about like the box they come in. Okay, we've planted this apricot tree, and as mentioned, with reasonable soil fertility, there's no need to fertilize the fill soil. But there is a need to support your investment of 30 or 40 bucks a tree to fertilize a tree with a top dressing once it's planted. Here's a general principle. Where do you put fertilizer, whatever the source of fertilizer? You put it at and slightly above the effective feeding root zone of the plant. In this case, with this young fruit tree, the roots spread a couple feet and they're down about 8 or 10 inches. So I'm going to simply apply fertilizer on the surface, work it in slightly a couple inches with a fork, and then water. Let me state that water activates fertilizer, especially dry fertilizer. The way that nutrients actually get into plants is first they have to be dissolved into the soil solution or the soil water. And when you say soil solution, don't think Perrier or Calistoga. Think of ooey, primordial, slimy, oozy liquid. Ah, it's good. They need to be dissolved into the soil solution, and then essentially nutrients hitchhike a ride in water up into and throughout the plant. So here's my recommendation for the freshly planted fruit tree. Apply about 2 to 3 shovelfuls of compost. Whether you make it yourself, probably preferred, or you buy it in. A quality finished compost. Spread it in a circle of a couple feet around the trunk. Apply plus or minus about a pound of an organic granular fertilizer. In this instance, I'm using a blend of 2 fertilizers. These days when I go to the garden center, it's like option paralysis. Every time I go, just about, there's a new brand of certified organic fertilizer. 10 years ago, there really wasn't. It's a marvelous thing. Two among many that I like would be Sustain, which is simply composted turkey manure and litter. And it's a good source of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. It's good. It also is formulated in a kibble type form so that you have 3 30-day slow releases of the nitrogen. And this makes for a more efficient retrieval by the fruit tree. And it's good. Another brand I like is Dr. Earth, and along with it another brand called Gardner and Bloom. And I like them, yeah, they're well-rounded in terms of their NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium content. But what they have is they have inoculant of mycorrhizal fungi laced into the fertilizer. Mycorrhizal fungi are basically root extenders. They live in association with plant roots, and they go out and they extend the forage range of the tree in this case, and they're very efficient at grabbing and retrieving and bringing up to the core of the tree root water, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So I'm using a blend of these two fertilizers here. The Sustain is a little higher in nitrogen, and the Dr. Earth in this case has mycorrhizal fungi. I've blended them together. You use about a pound, an old kitchen adage, a pint's a pound the world around. I got a pint. Truth of the matter is it's not. The particle density and weight of all different substances is slightly different, but good enough. Let's sprinkle this around the trunk of the tree. Again, as is so often the case with gardening, you want to employ the evenness principle. Everything you do is done evenly. And you especially pay attention to the corners and the edges in any situation because the middle tends to have some overlap and take care of itself. So I have applied in an even fashion fertilizer. And then I'm going to put 2 or 3 shovelfuls, spadefuls of compost on in a similar fashion. You want to be careful that you don't ever put anything biologically active and alive up against the trunk of the tree. It can compromise it. We're good. And now I'm going to take my tilthing fork or garden fork, and let me just do a little aside here. These are so much the tools of the trade for a hand-scale gardener. The D-handled spade and fork. They are marvelous tools. This is a brand called Bulldog, produced in England. It's the top of the line. It's the best. Forget about the rest. Bulldog. So I'm just going to take my tilthing or gardening fork and just scratch this fertilizer and compost slightly into the soil, a couple, 3 inches, just off the surface. Okay, we talked about the importance of watering the soil at the right moisture, not too wet, not too dry. And I have 3 samples of soil here. I'll run you through the extremes from one end of the continuum, way too dry, to the other, way too wet, and smack dab in the middle, just about right. So a soil is at the right moisture to either dig, plow, cultivate, till, and at that same moisture, it would be called good growing moisture, when you go down and you grab maybe 4 or 6 inches deep a handful of soil, and you see if you can put some pressure on it, and does it ball up and stay together? And the answer is yep. And then when you take it and you kind of thumb it and throw it a little bit in your hand, does it fall apart readily? The answer again is yes. And I want to pause here again and remark about this remarkable soil that has really good structure and aggregation. You can see small, intermediate, and large pieces. These are individual particles of sand, silt, and clay that have been aggregated together, clumps, if you will, although that's clunky, into aggregates. This is a good soil, folks. So it balls up and it comes apart readily. That's good growing moisture. That's also good digging or plowing moisture. So I don't need to water my trees when they're at this stage, but as time goes on, a few days later, I've got a handful of soil here that just flat out is too dry and doesn't ball up. Don't let this happen. I should have watered 2 days ago. And I say that in all earnestness because nothing shuts down the growth of a tree, especially a young tree, quicker and more permanently in season than a water deficit. If the soil gets dry, too dry 1-2 times, the tree will flat out just stop growing for the year. You've lost a year of growth. On the other end of the continuum, you don't want to mess with the soil in any regard when it's too wet. You don't want to work it, plow it, dig it, and you don't need to water when the soil is too wet. Indicators of too wetness. Well, it certainly balls up. Let's see if I can get it to drip a little bit. Not quite. I've got a pretty serious oil slick on my hands, a stain. If you're using a tool, anytime you're using a tool and soil adheres to the spade or the disc plow, that's too wet. If you work a soil when it's this wet, you will literally create a clod or a series of clods. Clods are not natural things. They're usually a byproduct of poor cultivation practices, watering too much, working soil when it's too wet. Here we have a freshly planted apricot tree, not just any apricot, but a Blenheim apricot, the apricot variety to grow. And I dug an ample hole, 2 or 3 feet wide, a couple feet deep. I planted the tree, firmed in the soil. I top dressed with both compost and a granular organic fertilizer. In this case, a product called Sustain, S-U-S-T-A-N-E, and it contains 8% nitrogen. When you get trees in the ground, you want to really, whatever the size of the tree, when you stick it in the ground in year 1, you want to double that tree canopy. In year 2, double what you got after the first year. What helps a tree grow in that respect? Vegetative growth, nitrogen. So you use a relatively high nitrogen product. In this case, the Sustain 8% nitrogen. So I sprinkled about a pound of that on, a couple, 3 shovelfuls of compost. I scratched them into the soil, and now I'm going to water in the tree. Transplanting and watering go hand in glove. It should be almost Pavlovian, a knee-jerk reaction. You plant something, you water it in. One of the predicates of success for transplanting is good soil-root contact. Now with a little lettuce or even a mid-sized pepper transplant, you're a little delicate and gentle. But with a tree, don't hold back. You really just flood the whole root zone. I jokingly will say, access your inner child and mud it up. So I'm going to make a couple, 3 passes around this tree, create a good-sized puddle, let it soak in, do it again. And I want to ensure that I've wet the whole root zone, which comes out about 12, 15 inches, goes down maybe 15, 18 inches like that. And that'll get me off and running with growing. And then I won't have to water again predictably for 2, 3, 4 weeks. It depends on the nature of the spring's weather. Let me grab a hose and demonstrate. Again, don't do this. It has a compacting effect on the soil. You want to be down on the ground, moving a hose. Yeah, it's accumulating and puddling, but not excessively so. So let me make a pass. A second pass. And let me stand here for a few seconds to entertain you with something while that water soaks in, and then I'll do it again. So, protecting your investment. The old phrase was, don't put a $5 tree in a 50-cent hole. It's been updated for inflation. Don't put a $30 tree in a $3 hole. As you go all along the way, from the moment you plant and you fertilize and you watering on a weekly basis or so, you're pruning and training, everything that you are doing with growing a fruit tree is about protecting that initial investment. Trees are pretty pricey. If you're buying retail, it's going to cost you 30 to 40 bucks a tree. If you're buying at scale, as it were, from a big-time nursery, if you order 25 or 30 of one type of tree, you might be able to get the price down to $10, maybe $8 like that. But whatever your investment, you want to protect it. All right, the water is soaked in. I'm going to invoke that time-honored phrase, good enough. Another thing about watering is water activates fertilizer, particularly dry fertilizer, as was the case with this granular Sustain that I put on. In order for nutrients to become available, they must first be dissolved into the soil water, then taken up by the roots, up the xylem tubes, distributed throughout the trees, distributed especially to the leaves. In the textbooks it says photosynthesis only happens in an aqueous solution. That means there needs to be water in the ground, water taken up by the tree, water in the leaves during the heat of the day when the tree can photosynthesize optimally. Okay, we're going to cap it off, literally and figuratively. I'm going to apply a mulch around this tree. Your choice, you have many choices. Deciduous leaves are great as a mulch. Straw, not hay, is good as a mulch. Hay contains seeds, grass seeds. You don't want that, but straw is good. But my preferred mulch is wood chips. Ramial wood chips, as they're called. There's quite a bit of literature, research literature now, talking about how the use of ramial wood chips in perennial tree systems, orchards, really ramps up soil biology. One thing it does is it caps in the moisture. You're going to find that you have to water appreciably less if you have a 3 to 5 inch layer of chips on the surface. I apply them in the spring and then again in the fall. And this is almost pure carbon. It's wood. If you looked at the carbon-nitrogen ratio of something that's very carbonaceous like straw, it's 40 to 50 to 1. If you look at the CN ratio of wood chips, it's 4 to 500 to 1. Again, basically this is wood. And yet it breaks down really quickly. I apply a layer in the spring, and while it's not totally gone when I come to apply a second layer in the fall, it's residual. And so it breaks down quicker. Once you get going in the system over 3 or 4 years, it really starts to break down quickly. It really ramps up soil biology. It rots down and liberates the nutrients that are in the chips themselves, and its physical effect on the soil is such that it really creates a conducive habitat for all kinds of beneficial microbes. Basically, in a nutshell, it's a good thing. So I'm going to apply in about a 2-3 inch layer around the tree. And let me stress again, you never want to put anything biologically active up against the trunk of the tree. It could compromise the bark and bring down the tree. So I always scoot the chips out from the trunk after I'm done. Let me also say that conventional wisdom says, don't do this. Whenever I hear, don't do something, of course, I run right out and do it. Now, I don't do it on an orchard. I do it on a tree or two to see, well, does that work or not? And the answer is it works, and it works fabulously. Let me get a little more specific. This is wood chips on the soil surface in a perennial tree system. This is not wood chips in an annual vegetable crop system turned into the soil. That has many deleterious things about it, but this is really good. The other thing it does is it really suppresses weed growth. Well, sort of. That is, it really suppresses annual weeds, just about 100%. Not totally effective with perennial weeds, but it's still better than